Hello students, today we are going to discuss another topic of law of torts relating to nuclear damage claims commissioner, powers, functions, jurisdiction and constitution. To start with the introduction, nuclear accidents have been termed mass torts and have shaken the conscience of the world in the recent past. Therefore, governments and international organizations have enacted international treaties and corresponding laws to prevent their occurrence in future. The International Atomic Energy Agency is responsible for establishing civil liability for nuclear damage, including the Vienna Convention on Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage and the Convention on Supplementary Compensation for Nuclear Damage. The Convention on Supplementary Compensation, that is CSC, was ratified in 1997 to establish a minimum national compensation amount. The Civil Liability of the Nuclear Damage Act, that is CLNDA of India, was implemented in 2010 to establish a prompt recompense system for the individuals affected by nuclear accidents. The CLNDA imposes strict operator liability, holding the operator accountable for damages resulting from an accident at rupees 1500 crores. If damage claim exceeds rupees 1500 crore, the government may intervene. The government's liability is limited to 300 million special drawing rights. The CLNDA also includes a clause on supplier liability, allowing operators to pursue legal action against the suppliers in case of nuclear incidents resulting from defects. The present discussion shall highlight the authorities, their powers, functions and modus operandi for redressal as provided under the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act of 2010. To start with the Claims Commissioner. Students, the right to seek compensation for nuclear damage is granted to individuals who have experienced such harm as outlined in the legislation. In order to facilitate the resolution of claims for compensation related to nuclear damage, the central government is empowered to designate one or more claims commissioner for certain areas through a formal notification. Now, let us discuss the criteria for selection as the claims commissioner. In order to be eligible for the appointment as a claims commissioner, an individual must meet one of the following criteria. First, they must either currently hold or have previously held the position of a district judge, or they must have served in a capacity within the central government at a rank not lower than additional secretary to the Government of India or an equivalent post. Students, the remuneration, benefits and contractual provisions pertaining to the position of claim commissioner shall be determined in accordance with the established regulations. The claims commissioner shall adhere to the approved procedure for the adjudication of claims under this particular act. Students, the claims commissioner has the authority to work with the individuals with specialized knowledge in the field of nuclear energy as well as the other people in accordance with the regulations to facilitate the process of conducting investigations. In cases where an individual is connected with the claims commissioner, they shall get compensation, fees or allowances as determined by the established regulations. The claim commissioner is granted the powers of a civil court under the Civil Procedure Code of 1908 when fulfilling their duties under this particular act. The powers granted to authority include compelling individuals to appear and testify under oath, obtaining and presenting relevant documents, accepting evidence in the form of sworn affidavits, requesting access to public records and their copies from any court or office, issuing commissions to examine witness and any additional matters that may be specified. Now, let us discuss about the Nuclear Damage Claims Commission. This commission is established when the Union government deems it necessary in the public interest to adjudicate claims for injury or damage resulting from a nuclear incident. The central government will issue a notification specifying the number of members, which will include a chairperson and a maximum of 6 additional people. The appointment of the chairperson and other members of the commission shall be made based on the suggestions of a selection committee. This committee will be composed of 3 specialists who possess a minimum of 30 years of expertise in the field of nuclear research and a retired Supreme Court judge. In order to be eligible for the position of chairperson of the commission, an individual must meet the criteria such as having reached the age of 55 and having either served as a judge of a high court or possessing the qualifications necessary to become one. However, it is important to note that the appointment of current judge can only be made after the consultation with the Chief Justice of India. In order to be eligible for an appointment as a member, the individual must meet the following criteria. They must be at least 55 years old and they must satisfy one of the following conditions. That is, they must have previously held or currently hold the position of additional secretary to the Government of India or a comparable position within the central government and possesses specialized expertise in the legal aspects of nuclear liability resulting from the nuclear incidents, or they must have served as a claims commissioner for a minimum of 5 years. Students, the term of office of the chairperson or member is 3 years starting from the date they assume their position. There may be reappointment for an additional 3-year term. However, it is important to note that individuals cannot continue to serve as chairpersons or members once they reach the age of 77. Now, let us discuss about the resignation and removal. The chairperson or a member has the option to resign from their position by submitting a written notice to the central government. It is important to note that the chairperson or member will continue to hold their office for a period of 3 months from the date of receipt of the resignation notice unless the central government grants permission for them to step down earlier. Alternatively, their office will be relinquished upon the appointment of a successor or upon the completion of their term, whichever occurs first. Now, the chairperson or a member of the central government shall be dismissed from their position if they have been declared insolvent, if they have been convicted of an offence that according to the central government's judgment involves immoral behaviour, they have become physically or mentally incapable of fulfilling their duties as a member, they have acquired a financial or other interest that is likely to negatively impact their role as a member, and lastly, they have misused their position in a way that is harmful to the public interest. thus making their continued tenure in the office detrimental. In accordance with the stipulations outlined above, it is imperative that no member be subjected to removal without being afforded the opportunity to present their case and be heard. The act of serving as an arbitrator is also prohibited for anyone who currently holds the position of chairperson or member. This prohibition of practice stipulates that upon the conclusion of their term, the chairperson or any member of the commission is prohibited from engaging in any activities that involve appearing, acting or pleading before the commission. The chairperson possesses the authority to oversee the overall administration of the commission and execute any powers that are mandated. The commission shall be furnished with the officers and other personnel by the central government as deemed appropriate. Now, students, let us discuss the modus operandi for submitting an application before the Claims Commissioner. The Claims Commissioner, upon notification of a nuclear incident as outlined in section 3, is responsible for initiating a comprehensive publicity campaign to invite application for individuals seeking compensation for nuclear damage. The manner in which this publicity is conducted is at the discretion of the Claims Commissioner, who will ensure that this is executed in a manner deemed appropriate. An individual who has suffered harm has the right to submit an application for nuclear damage compensation before the Claims Commissioner or the Commission. It could be elaborated as follows. The individual who possesses the property that has incurred damage, or the legal representatives of the dead individual, any agent who has been properly authorized by the aforementioned individual, owner or legal representative. After that, the submission of each request for reparation to the Claims Commissioner for nuclear harm must adhere to the established format, including the provisions of specific details and inclusion of relevant supporting documentation. In accordance with the stipulations outlined in section 18, it is required that any application filed be submitted within the time framework of 3 years from the moment the individual affected by nuclear damage becomes aware of such damage. Upon receiving an application in accordance with subsection 1 of section 15, the Claims Commissioner is required to provide notice of the application to the operator and allow both parties an opportunity to present their arguments. The Claims Commissioner must then resolve the application and issue an award within 3 months from the date of receiving the application. Students, during the process of granting an award pursuant to this section, the Claims Commissioner is prohibiting from considering any benefits, reimbursements or amounts earned by the applicant as a result of an insurance contract obtained by the applicant or their family members or by any other means. In cases where an operator demonstrates a clear intention to avoid paying the award amount by the disposing of their property, the Claims Commissioner has the authority to issue a temporary injunction to prevent such actions. This injunction is granted in accordance with the regulations outlined in the Code of Civil Procedure. The Claims Commissioner ensures that award for nuclear damage are delivered within 15 days. Operators have the right to recourse under circumstances such as written contracts, supplier actions or intentional actions. Compensation for nuclear damage is limited to 10 years for property damage and 20 years for personal injury, starting from the incident date. If the damage is due to stolen, lost, jettisoned or abandoned material, the period is calculated from the incident date. Now, requirements for the claim of compensation could be discussed hereunder. The Commission is responsible for assessing the compensation claims for nuclear damage, requiring specific requirements such as completing a designated form, providing relevant details and submitting supporting papers. Applications must be submitted within 3 years of an individual becoming aware of the damage. The Commission has the authority to adjudicate on all the applications submitted or transferred to it. After transferring the cases, the Commission will consider them from the point at which they were before the transfer. The chairperson can establish panels of 3 members to conduct hearings on claims with decisions made by a majority vote. The Commission is not obligated to follow the Code of Civil Procedure of 1908, but can govern its own procedures, including meeting locations and schedules. It has the same powers as a civil court, including compelling individuals to testify under oath, obtaining and presenting relevant documents, accepting evidence, requesting access to public records, issuing commissions to examine witness and other regulations. The Commission must make a decision within 3 months of receiving the application. The proceedings carried out before the Claims Commissioner or the Commission under this Act shall be regarded as the judicial proceedings as per the definitions provided in Section 193, 219, 228 and 196 of the Indian Penal Code. The jurisdiction of civil courts is generally excluded save for the Supreme Court and a High Court that exercise jurisdiction under Articles 226 and 227 of the Constitution. These courts are not permitted to entertain any suit or proceedings related to the matters that fall within the purview of the adjudication by the Claims Commissioner or the Commission under this Act. Furthermore, no court or other authority is authorized to grant an injunction in relation to any action taken or to be taken in accordance with the powers conferred under this Act. Now, let us discuss about the implementation of the award. The insurer or any individual obligated to provide insurance or financial security under Section 8 of this contract is required to make a deposit of the awarded amount within the specified time frame and according to the instructions given by the Claims Commissioner or the Commission up to the extent of their liability under the contract. The operator is required to deposit the excess amount of an award beyond the maximum liability stated in subsection 2 of section 6. If a person fails to deposit the awarded amount within the specified time frame, it can be recovered from them as the arrears of land revenue. The cash that has been deposited will be allocated to the specified recipient as outlined in the award within a time period of 15 days starting from the date of deposit. The Commission is required to generate an annual report also that provides an in-depth summary of its activities during the fiscal year. This report must be submitted to the central government in accordance with the format specified. Students, this is the responsibility of the central government to deliver the report to both the houses of parliament. The dissolution of the Commission could potentially transpire under particular conditions. Initially, in the event that the central government concludes that the Commission, which was instituted pursuant to section 19, has achieved its designated purpose, the number of pending cases before the Commission is notably minimal, which would render the ongoing operational expenses uneconomical. In conclusion, the central government may dissolve the Commission through the issuance of a notification if it considers it necessary or expedient to do so. Any pending proceedings before the Commission shall be transmitted to the Claims Commissioner, who shall be appointed by the central government in accordance with subsection 2 of section 9 upon notification of the Commission's dissolution. As a result of premature termination of their offices, the chairpersons and all members of the Commission shall be deemed to have resigned from their positions and shall not be entitled to any compensation. In addition, the officers and other personnel of the Commission shall be appropriately transferred to an alternative authority or the office of the central government in accordance with the prescribed procedure. Officers and other personnel who are transferred shall be subject to identical terms and conditions of service that they would have been employed under during their tenure at the Commission. Should an officer or employee of the Commission accept an offer to serve in another authority or office, such a decision shall be rendered as a resignation. Furthermore, for the premature termination of their contract of service, no compensation shall be awarded as discussed earlier. Furthermore, in addition, the central government shall acquire all assets and liabilities of CEC. Now, let us discuss about penalties and offences. Individuals who violate any regulation established or directive issued in accordance with this legislation or do not adhere to the stipulations outlined in section 8 or neglect to remit the required sum as specified in section 36 shall face the following penalties: imprisonment for a maximum period of 5 years, a monetary fine, or both. Individuals who do not adhere to any of the directives issued under section 43 or impede any authority or individual in the execution of their rights as stipulated in this legislation subject to the penalties, including imprisonment for a duration for up to 1 year, monetary fines, or a combination of both. Students, in cases where a violation of this legislation has been committed by a corporation, individuals who were directly responsible for overseeing and managing the company's business operations at the time of the offence, in addition to the corporation itself, shall be considered culpable for the offence. Consequently, they shall be subject to legal proceedings and appropriate punishment. However, it should be noted that this provision does not impose any liability on such individuals under this legislation if they can demonstrate that they were unaware of the offence or that they took all the necessary precautions to prevent its occurrence. In the event that a company has committed an offence under this legislation and it can be demonstrated that the offence was committed with the consent or convenience or due to negligence on the part of any director, manager, secretary, or other officer of the company, say for example, director, manager, secretary shall also be considered culpable for that offence. Consequently, they shall be subject to legal proceedings and subsequent punishment in accordance with the law. Now, suppose an offence is committed by the government department. In the event that a violation of this legislation is perpetrated by any governmental department, the individual in charge of said department shall be considered culpable for the offences and subject to the legal proceedings and corresponding penalties. In case that the head of the department can demonstrate the offence was committed without their knowledge or they took all necessary precautions to prevent its occurrence, this section does not impose any liability or punishment on them. The jurisdiction to try any offence under this Act is limited to the court of a metropolitan magistrate or a judicial magistrate of first class with no authority granted to any lower court. The recognition of said offence shall only be acknowledged upon a complaint filed by a central government or any authorized authority or official designated by the aforementioned government. The central government possesses the authority to request information for an operator as it deems essential. The central government has an authority to exclude any nuclear installation from the provisions of this Act by issuance of a notification. This exemption may be granted when the central government determines that the danger associated with the nuclear installation is negligible due to the tiny amount of radioactive material involved. This Act is intended to supplement existing laws and should not be interpreted as undermining or superseding any other laws currently in effect. Furthermore, the provisions outlined in this Act do not grant the operator immunity from any legal action that could be pursued against him outside the scope of this Act. The central government as well as any person, officer or authority shall be immune from any legal action, prosecution or other legal proceedings for any actions undertaking in good faith in accordance with this Act or any rules, orders, directions issued under it. Now, students, let us come to the conclusion. Pokhran 2, India's second nuclear test, led to the adoption of a no first use policy. In 1999, the Indian government shifted to a policy of retaliation, asserting that nuclear weapons' primary purpose is deterrence. The issue of liability of nuclear damage gained attention in light of the tsunami attack that struck Japan and its consequences for the Fukushima nuclear power facilities. Conversely, there was a growing backlash against the proposed construction of an Indian nuclear power facility in Jaitapur, Maharashtra state. Protesters expressed concern regarding the potential ramification of nuclear radiation, including its detrimental impacts on the living organisms and the environment. Consequently, they demand that the compensatory jurisprudence be fortified to safeguard further generations in the event of a future nuclear catastrophes. In order to ensure the liability of such concerned parties such as operators, suppliers, corporations involved therein, the Indian Parliament enacted the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act as discussed in detail. However, the Act ascertains a clear-cut deviation from the principle of absolute liability, which needs to be worked out. With this, we come to an end of today's discussion. Thank you very much for the patience listening. Have a good day.